Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, since this is a psychology YouTube channel, everything that I say, everything that we talk about here may contain triggering material, so watch with care. Let's watch.
Pero ayer en la noche le hice algunas preguntas a Benjamin sobre su vida privada y no me gustaron mucho sus respuestas. Ayer lo que pude enterarme de Benjamin y de su vida privada me hizo sentir muy sorprendida y muy nerviosa.
Okay, so what she's saying is that their conversation last night, she learned that his narratives about his previous relationships were very blaming of the other person, and that makes her worried about being in a relationship with him, which, yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's an interesting red flag to look for, actually, right? That when you're dating someone, to ask them what happened between you and your previous partners, that, of course, the sort of best response is, well, I mean, but it depends, right? Because what if your previous partners were mostly to blame for everything? So, but I guess there's a style of response where even if you really had evaluated and everyone, maybe even your partner, agrees that they were mostly to blame, there's a way of talking about it that at least isn't like immature and blaming of the other person entirely. The way Benjamin was saying it had that kind of feeling to it. We saw an edited version of it, of course, and I think if we saw the full explanation from him, I think it would have been a little bit more redeeming. But who knows? Maybe they cut out worse things. But so she's saying, these are red flags, so I don't know about him. I suspect, who knows, that she is looking for a way out, and this is her way out, which I understand. That what we were saying from the beginning is there's a number of different hypotheses, one of which is that she was, very much into him, but upon meeting him, she's like, ugh, that happens. Or she was on the other end of the spectrum, never into him at all, and she's like, oh my God, what's happening right now? How do I get out of this? Or she was totally into him, or at least sufficiently into him. She hears this and she's like, oh, that's a big red flag, and I'm seeing some things about his personality. That seems less likely. It seems more likely that, what's the most, well, I don't know. Anyway, the point is I think she's looking for a way out, and she's entitled to that. Now, if she's more fundamentally just like, I don't want to be with him, I hope that she can at least recognize that in herself, because I think that'll help her in the breakup process. Because if she says something like, I'm breaking up with you because of the way you talk about your previous partners, he could say like, oh, no, I didn't tell you the whole story. There would be a debate there that could occur, rather than her just saying, look, I'm just sorry, I'm just not into you. I know that we talked a certain way over texting, and I felt those things at the time, but I don't feel those things anymore, and I know that's maybe hard to believe, but it is what it is. Anyway, let's see what happens.
Benjamin culpará mucho a su ex esposa y a su ex novia en su relación o por qué terminó con ellas. Creo que él ha estado tan inmaduro.
Yeah, it's hard to know. From the little bit that we saw Ben talking about his former partners, it's hard to, the way that Ben comes across, he has certain immaturities for sure, but I think generally speaking, I think, do we believe that Ben has no ability to take responsibility for his part in the relationship? I think that he could. He doesn't seem like the sort of person. We don't see any evidence of that, so I'm trying to figure out why I even believe that to be true. But anyway, she's making certain claims about him. And if this is her path to breaking up, and this is what she has evaluated, I'm not going to take that away from her. She knows him better than I do. But I will say that the way he responded, using this as a jumping off point, if y'all go on a date with someone and you're just getting to know them, you ask that question, what happened with your ex-wife? And he says something like, well, she just never really, the way that he responded, I wouldn't consider that to be a huge red flag of anything. It could be something, but I wouldn't be like, whoa, back away from that person. It's pretty common, particularly if a divorce is kind of newish, and I think it is for Ben, that you'll have shall I say, distorted, maybe a little self-centered narrative of the scenario that, divorce is really hard. So now I think I hypothesized as well, and I have been, that Ben has an immature or a underdeveloped awareness of himself and how to date, given his progression in life, and how to some extent he might just now be entering a free space of adolescent experimentation with relationships. And in that space, we don't expect people to be extremely self-aware and mature. Might there be other aspects of his personality that are, commensurate with his age? I think so, but let's watch.
Cuando llegamos al hotel por la noche, le invité a Benjamin a que vaya a desayunar el día siguiente. Pero cuando llegué a mi cuarto, Benjamin dejó muchos mensajes a mi celular.
I think this is consistent with Ben, that the next day he is feeling really distant and he's hurt, and he's a texter. He's a long texter, which some people appreciate. It sounds like she's a little put off by it. I think because she doesn't want to be with him. If she were into it, then she'd be like, yay, text from my future fiance. Anyway, this all in Spanish. I wonder what all this means. Okay, we're seeing a translation. My love for you grows stronger every day, but it seems that God has hardened your heart towards me. It seems that God has hardened. Wouldn't it be the devil that would? It seems that God has hardened. What does that mean? I mean, if God has hardened her heart, then that's what God wants, according to Ben. So thus, maybe this is Ben's way of saying, I have tremendous feelings for you still, but it looks like you don't love me anymore, and that makes me sad. And since God is involved, it's sort of like a done deal or something. Maybe this is his way of narrativizing what's happening. It's an interesting way of putting it, that God has hardened your heart towards me. I mean, at the very least, he wants to communicate, your heart has been hardened towards me. And that's a common vibe that people will have when they're being dumped, is like, something has caused you to harden your heart towards me. Maybe it's God, maybe it's you're not trying hard enough. It's normal when you're being dumped to be like, you're not trying hard enough. You've purposely turned away from me, purposely turned back towards me, instead of just acknowledging that love is what it is, and it's mysterious, and it can really hurt. Love giveth and taketh away. You fear who I am and my intentions, okay? But there is no room in love for that. Therefore, this is not love, but know this, I do love you, I always will. That's a little concerning. You fear who I am and my intentions. Okay. Is that the gestalt of her approach? Because, I mean, she certainly has suggested that, right? And her parents have. Well, has she? Who I am. I think that is true, that after their conversation the previous night, she was being immediately, not super hostile, just sort of like, oh, that's kind of concerning that you blame your former partners for everything. But given the story since he landed in Peru, it just seems like Mahogany, either before he landed in Peru, had decided she didn't like him at all, or very quickly decided, or never liked him, which is a whole possibility. We understand that, right? But there is no room in love for that. There is no room in love for that. Okay? Therefore, this is not love, but know this, I do love you. I always will. That's it. It's weird. Why is he putting it this way? Of just like, you dumped me, I didn't dump you. I don't know. I mean, okay. So what's he say? You fear who I am and my intentions, which, it's wrong. He's essentially criticizing her for having a distorted fear about who he is and his intentions. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that It's possible, because I think it's very possible that Ben has good intentions, meaning that he wants to pursue a relationship, to fall in love, to get married, to have kids, the regular intentions, rather than the intentions that some people will accuse Ben of, which is possible, but it doesn't seem highly likely, but it's possible. Some sort of psychopathic con artist intention, abusive intention. It's possible, but who knows? So he thinks he's being accused of that, and he's saying that's not true. I don't know, just the way he talks, it's just kind of an interesting way of talking. Let's see what else he says.
No contesté ninguno, porque estaba un poco incómoda y molesta. Y creo que eso es mejor.
Yeah, talk about it in person. It's somewhat common enough that some people actually communicate better over texting, but more often than not, when I have couples in my office talking about text conflicts that they've had, I very frequently will conclude and tell them, stop communicating over texting about this sort of thing. Unless you're very good with emojis, you're not actually communicating what you're really meaning, and you're not there to see the effect it has on your partner. And these kind of text exchanges can spin out of control real fast. So good on Mahogany for saying, let's talk about it in person.
Si en realidad he estado durmiendo en cuartos separados. A lo que quiero ir es que ya soy mayor de edad y también sé cuidarme a mí sola. Ustedes siempre me han aconsejado y enseñado.
I mean, the parents, it's so interesting that learning that she's 22, even though that's not that much different than 24 in a lot of ways, of course, but in some ways it does change it, at least for me, because there is a different, and of course, for Peruvian parents, I'm guessing it's somewhat similar, that there is a gradient between 22 and 24. Anyway, for the parents, they're like, and I think she recently turned 22. Not that means a huge thing, but it kind of does. When you get old, sometimes you just forget how old you are, because it doesn't really matter. What's the difference between 45 and 46, really? But when you're really young, right, you go by months, right? My kid is 1 year and 3 months old. So, because it's a bigger difference. And when you're just 22, it's different than being almost 23, right? Even though you're still 22. Not always. But anyway, point is that the parents, I think, are totally rational in still feeling responsible for their, she says she's of age, she's an adult now, she's able to make these choices. But, imagine for yourself out there, some of you probably have kids that are 21, 22. If they met someone online that was 30 years older, and they were going to some other town together and staying in a hotel, you'd probably be concerned. There's different approaches to that, of course, but the parents are exhibiting that, which, makes total sense. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.